figure that out, and then during that time and right afterwards, supposedly he's dressed up as a woman. He's using all low tech, no cell phone, anything, and he's going along the river. No mode of transportation. How do you penetrate a network like that? How do you get towards him, and how did you know that was him on the video?
Yeah, we believe it was him on the video.
Okay.
You still can't prove it to this day, but we believe it was him. That human intelligence reporting. And there was nothing, we couldn't tell from height or scars, and we couldn't see enough to tell that. And we weren't as refined in the spring of 2004 as we got later.
Right.
And we started to know that he was moving around in western Iraq, in Al-Anbar, not far from Fallujah. He was dressing up in local clothing. He was dressing up occasionally in women's clothing. He was driving through coalition checkpoints. I don't know how often, but we know he did it a number of times. He was keeping a low profile and visiting subordinate leaders as he went. We started to build up not only a pattern of life, but an understanding of his network. So instead of focusing just on him, however, we went to destroy his network. And so we went from, in the summer of 2004, my force, which was the force going after him, and there were conventional forces doing an awful lot of other things. We did 18 raids in August of 2004. In August of 2006, my same force did 300 raids, same month, 10 raids a night. So we amped up to this level, and we kept that for more than 2 years. We kept that same pace for more than 2 years. This is not a big force.
And the reason is the intelligence better, or just applying so much pressure to the enemy that it's causing the enemy unforced errors?
It's two things. And that's a thoughtful question, because the first is, we were doing the Rocky Balboa thing. Right. We were going after Apollo Creed's midsection. We didn't think we could decapitate him. It would take too long to find him, so we were trying to gut the people who actually do the work in the organization. And we were doing that at an incredible pace. What that forced them to do was several things. First, it forced them to bring more people, leaders up, which were less experienced at each turn. It also caused them to do things like communicate more. Every time you rip part of it out, they got to find a new way to communicate. They got to find a new way to distribute things. They got to find a new way to coordinate. And when they do that, that forces them to raise their profile, either signal intelligence or the way they move or the way they operate. So when they're forced to do that, it makes them more vulnerable, which causes us to hit them. So we're doing the equivalent of fast break basketball under the theory they can't run that fast. If we go slow, a terrorist organization like that can stay below the visibility of people, and they can be extraordinarily effective. So you had to force them into something they can't do well. Now, it took us several years to do that. Now, Zarqawi, the same thing. We were trying to force him to make errors. We were trying to decapitate pieces of his organization to force the leader to go fix it, to force the leader to take action. We did some of that, but he was pretty darn disciplined too. As we said, he was not talking on cell phones. He was, every time he operated through someone, he operated through what we call a cutout. So if you wanted to see Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, you might have to come to me. I might not know where he is, but I'd go to the next person. They would know. So to get him, you'd actually have to follow the whole change or get all of us at once. And so it became pretty effective. We finally, in the spring of 2006, were tightening the noose on him, knew more and more about him, and we had damaged his network very, very badly. And we did an operation that we had been watching this place for weeks. And suddenly we had a gathering of 12 people there, and we did an operation on almost no notice and captured 12 guys and 1 cell phone. And when, in that point in Iraq, if you capture 12 middle-aged men and 1 cell phone, you know something's wrong, because everybody has a cell phone. So they either, by discipline, were not bringing cell phones, or they threw them away. So as soon as you get this, you know, this is different. We went through these 12 guys, and we were interrogating them and whatnot, and over a series of days, and different people seemed important. Finally, at one point, we had all of them, and we didn't mistreat detainees. That's one of the misconceptions. You talk to them, and that's the way you get people to do things. Before talking to them, we gave every one of them separately a slip of paper and said, write on this slip of paper who the most important guy here is of the group. They all wrote the same name. So that guy suddenly becomes the new focus of discussion. we talked to him for 40 days straight. So much that our interrogators developed a close relationship with him and whatnot. And finally, he decided that he had some information that he wanted to give us, and he told us about Abu Musab al-Zarqawi's spiritual advisor. And he said, if you watch that guy, he personally goes to see Zarqawi. Okay. So for 17 straight days, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, we watched that guy and his family. We watched him from above, we watched him from people on the ground, we watched him from every way we could in a very difficult period in Baghdad. As I'm sure you remember, it was extraordinarily bloody. We watched this guy, and we were told by the one detainee that if he took a certain action, that was signaling that he was going to go see Zarqawi. He moved his family to another location. If he moves his family to his brother's house, basically have him go live with him for a day, that tells you he's going out of town to visit Zarqawi. So we're watching, and then one day we see him move the family. So we get ready. The next day, he gets out and he drives around. He's a driver. He drives around town and comes back home again. But we're still watching. Then he starts leaving town, and he drives out on one of the highways heading out of town, and he stops on the side of the highway, divided highway, and gets out of the car, and the car goes on. That wasn't completely strange for Iraq. They did things like that. But suddenly a truck came from the other direction. He got in it and drove away, and we said, well, that's pretty slick. That's tradecraft, they call it. So we followed the truck. He went to another location, went into a restaurant place, did the same sort of thing, came out in a different door, got in a different vehicle. We're watching very closely. We followed him, and we went to the location where, in fact, it was clear to us as we saw him enter a building that Zarqawi was there, and so we were able to strike him. The day after the operation, I went down to the squadron that had done the basic operation, and I gave one medal. And you think, well, I'm going to give a medal to the operators that land and do all this stuff. I gave a medal to one intelligence sergeant who had pulled it all together, who had been indefatigable. I mean, he'd been like a dog on a bone. It was just, and in front of everybody, he said, this is the reason we got him. And that's the kind of professionals that really embody the success.